What if the Appalachian Mountains aren't just beautiful scenery, but a vast map of the unexplained? From glowing orbs rising over North Carolina's Brown Mountain, written about as early as the 1910s and formally investigated by the USGS in 1922, to the massive UFO flap over Wytheville, Virginia in 1987 that produced hundreds of reports, the record here is unusually rich and persistent. What links a century-old ghost light on a ridge, a town besieged by UFOs, and repeated disappearances in the mountains? Tonight, we'll trace how lights, vanishings, and folklore have threaded together, and why that matters. And it begins on a ridge where strange lights still burn. Imagine standing at a Blue Ridge overlook. The forested slopes stretched in darkness below. Out of the quiet, faint glows rise over the ridges, drifting upward like lanterns lifting from the ground. They hover, brighten, and then fade. Movements far stranger than headlights or distant campfires could ever explain. This is what travelers describe when they speak of the Brown Mountain Lights, a phenomenon that has unsettled North Carolina's mountains for more than 100 years. The first published reports appeared in local newspapers in the early 1900s, bringing the mystery into wider attention. Locals insisted they had seen such glows long before, but the surge of coverage drew curious visitors hoping to watch for themselves. Debates began almost immediately. Some insisted the lights were the glow of trains curving through the valley, while others claimed they had watched the orbs hover in midair, where no rails or roads existed. In 1922, the United States Geological Survey sent geologist George R. Mansfield to investigate. His report suggested that many sightings could be explained by campfires or distant headlights reflecting off the atmosphere. Yet, even he admitted that some accounts could not be fully explained by natural or man-made sources. That official concession kept the mystery alive. If some lights fit familiar causes, others clearly did not. Over time, folklore became entangled with the science. Some modern retellings link the lights with Cherokee traditions, or speak of ghostly figures wandering the ridges. But historians caution that pre-1910 documentation is thin, and many of these ancient origins look more like later inventions layered onto the mystery. Whether or not the lights held meaning in centuries past, they have certainly gathered symbolic weight in recent memory, part science puzzle, part cultural legend. Scientists today still search for explanations. Possible theories include atmospheric electrical phenomena, such as ball lightning, or geological effects, like piezoelectric discharges from quartz-rich rock under stress. These competing ideas highlight how the lights remain within scientific debate, rather than myth alone. Technological monitoring has provided fresh evidence. Appalachian State University researchers conducted long-term surveys and logged thousands of hours that produced mostly ordinary results. But in 2016, their cameras captured something unusual. A genuine luminous orb, recorded from multiple angles, appearing in open air where no road could account for it. The rarity of that moment underscored the mystery. For every confirmed anomaly, there are countless empty nights, which makes each unexplained recording that much harder to dismiss. Today, the Brown Mountain Lights hold an unusual place. They draw both tourists and scientists. Families gather along overlooks to wait for a glimpse, while researchers quietly continue their measurements. Few mysteries balance entertainment and serious study in quite the same way. The question remains, Are the lights quirks of geology and weather, or a phenomenon we still don't fully understand? Whatever the answer, Brown Mountain shows how the unknown can linger in plain sight. And while strange orbs above a ridge may feel unsettling, Appalachia has also seen entire communities shaken when an ordinary sky filled with extraordinary shapes, night after night. In the fall of 1987, the town of Wytheville, Virginia faced one of the most intense waves of unexplained aerial sightings in Appalachian history. What began with a single sheriff's report quickly spiraled outward. Drivers along country roads reported lights that darted and hovered, moving too erratically to be planes. Within days, the local radio station was receiving hundreds of calls every night, and in just a few weeks, thousands of sightings had been logged. Police officers themselves confirmed seeing strange objects, solidifying the events as more than stories whispered between neighbors. At the center of it all stood radio journalist Danny Gordon. Initially, he treated the unfolding story as a curiosity, a few accounts to investigate before moving on, but each night, more people called in, insisting on what they saw. By late October, so many residents were gathered in open fields that the skies above Wytheville sometimes looked like an unplanned community watch, with dozens of people pointing upward at glowing discs, hovering spheres, or massive craft that appeared unnervingly close to the ground. What was once a local story exploded nationally when word spread of the sheer volume of reports. MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, classified the events as a classic flap, a concentrated outbreak of sightings in one place in one period. Gordon himself became a participant rather than a distant observer. He captured photographs of unusual craft, and eyewitnesses repeatedly described a distinct T-shaped object that appeared again and again, a motif sketched by multiple residents. Some of these accounts would later be compiled in the book Don't Look Up by Gordon and Charles Dellinger, preserving testimony that might otherwise have faded with time. The variety and recurrence of reports made it increasingly difficult to dismiss the phenomenon as simple misidentification, but the situation grew stranger. Gordon later reported that his home had been broken into. Though nothing of material value was taken, more unsettling, several of his negatives containing UFO photographs vanished. He also received anonymous phone calls, warning him to stop pursuing the story. Calls, he said, carried an official tone that made them impossible to ignore. These experiences were presented as his personal testimony, never confirmed as official interference, but they added another layer of unease for both him and the community. Other residents voiced the feeling that they, too, were being discouraged from speaking publicly. All of this unfolded against the tense backdrop of the late Cold War, when secrecy surrounded experimental aircraft and intelligence programs. Official explanations could be dismissed as misidentified planes or atmospheric conditions, but the sheer flood of consistent eyewitness accounts in Wytheville resisted such easy categorization. By the time the wave subsided, Wytheville had become more than a curious case of lights in the sky. It stood as an example of how a small town could be swept into a larger mystery, where ordinary people, local journalists, and even law enforcement confronted the unknown in front of their eyes. And while unexplained craft hovered over farms and valleys, elsewhere in Appalachia, the mystery took on an even darker form, one where people themselves were the ones who vanished. In parts of the Appalachian Range, the mysteries are not only seen above, they are felt on the ground, where trails seem to erase those who walk them. One of the most discussed examples lies around Glastonbury Mountain in Vermont, an area later dubbed the Bennington Triangle. Though at the far northern edge of the mountain chain, The accounts from this region echo the unsettling themes that appear again and again throughout Appalachia. In the 1940s, several people, including Paula Weldon in 1946, and others in the surrounding years, vanished in the Glastonbury and Bennington area. Despite some of the most exhaustive searches then attempted, witnesses reported seeing Weldon on the trail the day she disappeared, but despite hundreds of volunteers, the use of bloodhounds, and even aircraft sweeps, no physical evidence was ever found. Other disappearances in the same decade followed the same pattern, searches so expansive they should have uncovered some kind of clue, yet not a trace remained. The lack of tracks, clothing, or belongings became as haunting as the disappearances themselves, fueling the area's reputation and eventually inspiring the Bennington Triangle label coined by later writers. What makes these disappearances stand out is the silence that follows them. Families, law enforcement, and volunteers all described the same frustration, not just that searches failed, but that the mountains themselves seemed to refuse to give back even the smallest sign. It is one thing to lose a person to wilderness. It is another to lose every scrap of evidence that they were ever there. Local legends, of course, offer alternative explanations. Folklore tells of shadowy figures in the woods, of strange beings such as the so-called wood booger, and of the moon-eyed people, mysterious nocturnal figures said to live hidden in the ridges. These stories are centuries old in some form and breathed new life as explanations for the vanishings. To communities repeating these tales, the wilderness is not just dangerous, but alive with forces beyond ordinary sight. Skeptics counter this with reminders of the hazards of the Appalachian backcountry. Thick forests cloak sheer ravines, sudden weather shifts trap even seasoned hikers, and disorientation can happen within minutes in dense fog. Hypothermia, accidents, and predators all play known roles in wilderness fatalities. Even so, survival experts note that most accidents leave something behind, whether footprints, equipment, or clothing. In Bennington, the enduring mystery is the near total absence of such traces. Overlaying all of this is one more disquieting connection. Chroniclers often point out that areas of repeated disappearances also carry accounts of strange lights or unusual visitors in the sky. For some, the overlap is coincidence. For others, it suggests the vanishings and the aerial phenomena are not separate stories at all, but threads of the same tapestry. Are these disappearances part of natural hazard, local legend, or something unrecognized still at work in the mountains? Ona, the questions that remind us that Appalachia's mysteries rarely exist in isolation. They appear connected, as though separate events map onto one another across decades and ridgelines, a larger story still taking shape. Across Appalachia, the same motifs return. Unexplained lights, clusters of sightings, sudden disappearances, persistent folklore, and long silences from official voices. Each seems less like an isolated story than a recurring pattern that invites closer attention. Plausible explanations exist. Scientists point to atmospheric effects such as ball lightning or geological discharges in quartz-rich rock. Others see the building of folklore and cultural storytelling through the 20th century, and in the late Cold War, secrecy and possible military testing gave residents reason to doubt simple answers. None fully resolve the questions, yet each highlights part of the landscape. Which thread do you think ties these cases together? The land itself, human secrecy, or something else entirely? Tell us your reasoning in the comments. And if you'd like more evidence-based explorations of regional mysteries, remember to like this video and subscribe. Whatever the truth, these mountains keep their secrets, and the pattern keeps pulling us back to look.